jump in. Oh my days. Well, you know what? You pretty much blubbered the whole way here, so there's not going to be enough for the podcast.
Oh, mate, I can talk. You know that.
Yeah, you can talk underwater. Oh, how good are these? What are this? Let me adjust this thing. Is that good there? Is that all right there? Is that all right? Sweet. Okay. How good? Oh, yeah. Don't give me that view. Yeah, that's better. That's better. What's been happening, mate? Like, how was the train drive here?
Yeah, good.
Train ride.
Oh, mate, is there a better thing than public transport? You get to mix with the people. Like,
Oh, don't give me that spiel. Don't give me that.
The people.
You don't.
Where are the people?
Don't.
Working class.
Now, I did mention it in the car, but I want to mention it again. What have you done with your hair? Yeah, and it's not turkey. I can tell it's not turkey.
No,
but
mate, it's all natural. Just just good family, good life.
Lemon
I think
juice?
Ever since I left Newcastle and under Brian, where I was waking up with hair on my pillow from the stress, I think it's just flourished from there. I think it was my hair's like a Balinese dog. It just it'll survive anything and it will outlast anyone. So yeah, shout out to Luke Walsh.
shout out to Luke Walsh. Miss you, mate. What was more stressful? Your Penrith days with me, or your Newcastle days at the back end? The back end.
I think. Well, fortunate enough, I finished at Newcastle. In 2014-15.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, that time, obviously, in 07, prior to me going to Melbourne, was super stressful because of the fact that you saw the team unravelling.
Yeah.
You saw the culture being eroded, the very fabric of what made the club strong.
It's coming back, but
was getting taken away. No, it's not a surprise that one of the Knights' old boys in Justin Holbrook is getting it back to that place because, Titsy was there when we were, when I first came into Jersey Flag in '99. He was one of the great understudies of Joey. Didn't play heaps of first grade at Newcastle, but did an incredible apprenticeship, like under Joey and Matty. And a number of those, guns and legends that we had. But yeah, Penrith was stressful in different ways. But it was also, I was much more experienced to be able to handle that. And
do you come from Newcastle or Hull?
No, Hull KR.
Yeah.
Don't mix it up.
I know, Hull KR.
Hull FC and Hull KR. So yeah, Hull KR, because I'd left Newcastle, had success at Melbourne, and then went to KR, was brought there specifically to, again, try and elevate the culture, bring some professional standards, obviously, bring some pride back, to East Hull with a couple of the other recruits, like, Benny Gallier and, Chev Walker, and Vella was already there and whatnot. And and so I'd experienced, I suppose I'd carved a really good niche in the market where it was like, I understood, I believe, like what was required. And I think having not been blessed with talent, I was able to understand what it took, from a professional standards perspective, and what sacrifices you needed to make, game preparation, diet, stretching, love a stretch. You
love a facial when you stretch. I've still got this image in my head.
So I think, Penrith was wanting to be transformed under Ivan and Gus. And to see where the club, when I left the club after 2 years, obviously we just missed the 8. We ran 9th. We ran second last the year before.
Yep.
Ran 9th. And then, I think you're one game off the grand final, the following year.
Dogs, yeah.
So then to see what then Ivan has done, Matty Cameron's done, the board, and obviously the players, to see Nathan when he was a ball boy.
Crazy, eh?
At 14 or whatever he was. But even back then he was, he was such a good kid and so respectful, just loved being around the players, wanted to pass and catch, wanted to kick the footy. I think I may have showed him about his kicking game. I never had the chance to be unleashed at Penrith. But again, I really enjoyed that. It's always hard, like when you're transforming something. But I believe that the club, there were some tough decisions that the club had to make, which we all experienced, but it was for the betterment of the club, but also the players that ended up leaving. They all had success.
Yeah, it's true. Jenko, Lewis, Cootie. Who else
so
was
they
there?
all, those
Gordon.
guys went on and won comps.
Yeah.
And it shows that sometimes, and I experienced it at Newcastle, where, maybe it was best that I left. It was just how it was done and what was happening. And the club, in my view, never really recovered from that, because I think when you when you pull roots out, it takes a while to then sort of replant the seed to then have this, have the tree grow back. And I think that's certainly what is starting to happen now at Newcastle, and obviously what Penrith went to.
Well, mate, before we get started, I want to express my gratitude for you coming on the show today, presented by our good friends, JD Sports. Now, I'm going to be honest, when you chose these, I was like, out of all the shoes on that site, you could have maybe chose something a bit better. But you know what? I think the colour suits your personality.
Yeah. Well, one of my colours is blue, unless you've completely stitched me up and got the wrong.
No, that's what you wanted.
Yeah. Well, this is perfect. And they're Nike, which I love.
Like me looking now with you in them, or picturing it in my mind, you look very lad.
Well, coaching under 13s girls tackle for the Kincumber Colts. Shout out to the Colts. Undefeated this year.
Must be you. Must be all you.
A couple of the guys are coaching that team. Mate, I'll be wearing these with pride, just charging down the sideline. Just probably be told to sit down, and you can't encourage your girls the way you do. But yeah, I mean, this is great, JD. Thank you very much.
My pleasure.
And Nike, yeah.
How good's that? How good's that? Should we get into it, Josu?
This is good from you, because you never really used to give a whole lot away. So you're always very tight. If
we're going to be fair, like I was on below minimum wage when we played together. I was just scraping the barrel, like while you were rocking up in your luxury European cars. I was in my shit Magnum Mitsubishi falling apart. But we're getting to.
Yeah, well, I mean, but I saw. The fact that this is why we needed to lift minimum wage and whatnot. So people like yourself and others, that was you were my motivation to say, look how hard this bloke's training and what he's putting his body through. He needs to be properly rewarded.
You know what? I'm going to ask, what's your first memory of me?
Running 4 in 5s and just watching your quads completely blow out and just struggling to pick your feet up off the ground, just going,
the second preseason I was better.
You were better. One thing I did notice, though, is that you had a very strong, quick play of the ball, and I was like, this is someone I could run behind. So come in and have a carry. Get me out of yardage.
I love that. Fucking let's do it. Should we roll the intro?
Roll the intro.
All right, let's go. Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode here on Unscripted. I'm your host, Josh Mansour, and like always, hit that subscribe button and follow us across all platforms. Truly, truly appreciate it. Now, a few weeks ago, we had Andrew Abdo, and we got his thoughts and his side for where the game is at currently today. And today, I've got the pleasure and privilege to have President, or CEO, I should say, of the RLPA Association and former teammate of mine, Clint Newton. How's it going, mate?
Great to be here. It's what a fantastic. This is very you, this studio. You've always loved the bling, so yeah, it's good. Just don't forget your roots, mate.
Well, okay? Where is it? Like you were saying, I was a tight ass, had no money, and now I love the bling. Which one is it?
Well, clearly this has all been donated because it wouldn't be your money. But the stylist and whoever that is, it's very Josh.
Oh, thank you so much. Well, to add to the memorabilia, I'm thinking to get a lock of your hair because it's almost gone.
As I said, it'll be like prehistoric, like a dinosaur fossil. It'll last, for us. It'll outlast us all.
Scalp. Yeah. How's things with you, mate? Firstly, family's all good?
Good, yeah, the family's good. Raising 3 independent girls is a double-edged sword.
God bless.
So it will pay off down the line, but Yeah, no, they're going well. Carl's is great. Yeah, we love our life on the Central Coast now. So yeah, everything's going good.
Busy time coming around with RLPA.
Yeah, it's. I mean, there's always stuff in rugby league going on. But I mean, fortunately enough, we've built a fantastic team. Like I genuinely believe our team is world class and best in class globally when it comes to players' associations and sports administration. I think my job is. What builds trust and confidence from the players is building the best team and ensuring I've got the best people in key positions to be able to, engage the players, drive us forward, collect information, data, communicate with our players, but at its core, have a deep, sort of bone deep belief in what we do and why we do it, and that is then demonstrated by what we're able to produce. So, again, I don't need to be the smartest guy in our team. That's what building a good team is for, and I've got a fantastic team. So there's always stuff to do, but we get after it.
How many years now involved with the RLPA?
Oh, I mean, for me, so I date back to 2003 when I first got involved. I was on the board in 2003. Part of our first ever collective bargaining agreement, which Gordon Tallis led, in case you forgot, so that was good that was good to be a part of that, and Tony Butterfield as the leader, I think was fantastic, but to be a part of, and watching what it meant to the players back then, and having grown up in a household that was very much about. Looking after the most vulnerable, giving back, sort of strong sort of union, labour sort of background around that, particularly with my grandfather and his relatives and cousins and uncles and whatnot getting laid off in the mines in sort of like the 1960s, and then having to move to Sydney to Epping, and then he joined the police force and the unionised movement. But Dad helped Butsy a lot during that period of time, and funnily enough, the history of the association it's kind of 6 degrees of separation, because a lot of the people that my father was very close with also helped establish the association. Guys like Jack Gibson, who was a coach, Roy Masters, coach, Arthur Beetson was a player at the time, and a number of others that were a part of it. Now, they were all good mates of my dad's, particularly Jack, who he was very close with. So, he helped Butsy during that period. So I was on the board for about 4 years until I moved to Melbourne and wanted to sort of more focus on, my responsibilities there. Went to England for 4 years, then came back and got involved in the bargain in 2012, became general president in 12, 13. And then went into a full-time position in 2016 when I retired, and then became CEO in 2020 when COVID happened.
You've always been a strong voice for the players. As a teammate, you're always one of the most, had one of the loudest voices in the team room. So that's obviously transferred to what you're doing now. Do you enjoy doing it?
Yeah, I do. I think that, like anything, you got to pay a tax,
Big time.
for what you do.
Yeah.
There's always a tax to pay, whether it's mentally, emotionally, relationships that, you can lose along the way because you're standing for what you believe in.
You can never show a bad day, like you're having a bad day.
No, I mean, I think that, again, my job is to try and to demonstrate resilience and some resolve, but also I think now more than ever, people want to know, people are going to trust consistency in behaviour. They might not like what you stand for at different times, or how you go about it, but I think what people want is, I truly believe, and again, for me, it's never really been about validation, particularly when you faced rejection a lot, as a kid, growing up and not being selected in teams, and, not being great with talent, and just managing to persevere, and, having a strong determination to go and do the things that I wanted to do. But I do believe that, again, it's not about people liking you. It's about, is this person consistent in their behaviour? And I believe that we demonstrate that, and you've got to live it in that regard. And everything that we do is a science. It's evidence backed. It's fact based. It's studying other industries, which our team do a fantastic job of, and establishing that. And again, moving forward, I've never been, I think growing up, I had the best of both worlds. I had this, brutally honest father, but he had a lot of compassion. It's hence why he invested in junior golf, hence why he stuck up for players when he was on the tour, wanting to ensure that, people that were at the bottom end of the list, when they made the cut, got paid. He always told a story. He told a story about when he'd play a practice round with Jack Nicklaus and whatnot, because he had a lot of respect from the greats. Was very close with Nicklaus, Sevi Ballesteros, Arnold Palmer, Lee Trevino, those sort of guys, because I think they liked the way he went about things, because again, he was an Aussie through and through,
big time.
And again, I think that what he showed me was that as tough as it can be, the price that you pay for not standing up for what you believe in, I think, is a greater burden and a more heavier load to carry. And then I had a mother that was the other side, where, she was the most pure and, gentle person in the world, would listen to anyone, would,
always had a smile on her face.
Always there for everyone else. Yeah. So I think that was a good combination there. And I'd like to believe that that's what, we've brought, to the association. Again, it's never about, my expectation is never about people agreeing with us. I think it's a reasonable expectation and a fair one to have, is that you will listen, and you will try and understand.
Yep.
And then you be the judge. Again, this is the point, is that, our job is just to present the facts that we have, and tell our story, and then allow the listener, the viewer, the fan to make their own decision.
Yep.
There is no agenda with us, other than we want our sport to be the best in the world. And that starts at the centre with the players and their terms and conditions, and how they're respected and treated via the collective bargaining agreement. And that's not, the CBA is a, yes, legally binding document, but in our view, it is a relationship document more than it is a legal document, because it demonstrates the respect that the game has for the people that are out there, putting on the show, putting their livelihoods at risk, and putting their bodies on the line for the show.
Yep.
And for the fans.
Yep. You mentioned not wanting validation, but you know what? As a former teammate, we've obviously got a friendship. I want to give you validation, because ever since you've taken on the role, you've done an incredible job. And I remember when you took on the role, I believe it was during COVID as well. Prior to that, the RLPA wasn't really, I guess it was pretty much made fun of. It wasn't taken seriously. I think now we've got a very strong presence with you in charge, with all the good people under you as well. So, mate, I want to tell you, you've done an incredible job so far. And, I think it's fair to say all the players love having you around.
Yeah, thanks, mate. It's always nice to hear. I never, I've gotten better at getting compliments, but I think it just, I always think it's sort of it's not the cause of why you do it, it's the result of.
Of course.
And it's like when if people's cause is about, money and generating revenue, then, I think you're starting from the wrong place. That's the result of investment in here and, looking after people and whatnot. But yeah, we've come a long way. I do, it was a fair, I suppose, obstacle to overcome, and the belief in the RLPA was that it was a bit of a toothless tiger. But again, I think we had built that over time, and, the previous leaders, did their job to either keep it afloat and keep it alive, because there was a time when it was in some serious trouble, where it was going to, capitulate due to, not being financially stable. And that was in 2012, where, we made a vote, and I had got you all on the bus, and then we went to Homebush.
Yes, that's right.
And we had that vote about ensuring that we carved off money that would otherwise go to players via the salary cap. that would go to then fund the RLPA. So the players were paying for their RLPA rather than the other model, which other unions can do when they've got 30,000 members and they're deducting stuff from their salaries. We are deducting it from what you would otherwise receive, but it goes into obviously running the association. So that was a real fundamental shift in 2012.
Massive.
But yeah, it's we've come a long way, and I think that again, it's not about people loving us. We're not here to win awards for most loved. I think what we're wanting to do is ensure we play a critical role in, yes, we're being a supporter of the game, and we can be a supporter of the NRLs and clubs, but we can also be a strong adversary, and I think we need to be because it's not the NRL's job or the RLC job to always look through the lens of the player, because they have to run their business.
Of course.
And sometimes if you're just looking always through that lens, sometimes you're not going to act in the best interest of the business. But I think that when you couple the two together, that's where we can find the middle ground, and then that's how the game has been moving forward. I do not believe for a second that the game would be where it was now without a strong players association. And the significant shift did come in 2013, when we secured a much improved collective bargaining agreement where we did get an increase in minimum wage, insurances for players, contract security, that players that were, signing a 3 or 4 year deal, and if they got injured in year one and they were unavailable to perform sort of normal club obligations by, June 30, the following year, the club sack them. Like, they could terminate their agreement. Now, that is a huge issue. Like, when it comes to if you're buying a house, getting a mortgage, getting a loan, getting a credit card, all these things that women have only just got in our game. So the multi-year deals for women was a huge thing, because a lot of them that were wanting to buy a house and establish themselves, they couldn't, because there was no security, there was no long-term agreement. So these are sort of fundamental things that that should be provided given the risk that you take. And I think from there you saw a split of having come back from the Super League that is not unionised and does not have a strong representation. They're establishing that now, but there was Super League was basically tracking ahead of the NRL with its salary cap, image rights, and the distributions that you could have, and some of the tax concessions that were available in Europe, and it just went like that, And now when you look at our cap and our terms and conditions and the protections that players have, and the minimum wage, is where it is now, by comparison to the Super League, that it's like $100K difference.
Crazy.
So how can a player in England properly pursue a professional career if they're going to struggle to put food on the table, and be an athlete, like,
That makes sense.
And so yeah, I think that again, it's a credit to the game, because you need the other party to agree.
Of course.
So I will always acknowledge that. Yes, there's going to be a scrap, and you have to fight, for what you believe in. But there always has to be an agreement, and the game has agreed, to our collective bargaining agreement. So again, there has to be an acknowledgement of that without an agreement, we don't have what we have right
Well, a new
now.
one's coming up soon, right?
Yeah.
So from what I recall, last time because I was currently a player, we fought tooth and nail to kind of come to the table with the NRL to agree on a certain deal. Do you see that happening again?
Yeah, I don't think I would like to believe that it's not going to be as brutal and as drawn out. I think that the NRL are very much aware, and the people in positions of power are very much aware of what we believe in and what we stand for, and what we won't stand for. And again, that comes from a respect perspective, that if we just flip-flop and we don't stand for anything and we drift around and we've got no anchor, then again, of course, people are going to lose respect and not believe that you are actually here for the right reasons and doing the right thing. But I do believe that, given, yes, I'm in the position that I'm in, and the team that we have and the board that we have and the players on the board and the leadership structure that we have with our delegates and our player advisory group, the game is, it's abundantly clear that we are here to stay. We're not going anywhere. We are acting in the interests of the game via representing players.
Yeah, I agree.
And the CBA that we went through, we didn't have a long form agreement. So it's now 114 pages or whatever it is. It was basically, prior to that, it was, a dozen pages like a term sheet, and so therefore there was ambiguity and there was confusion and grey area and interpretations of rules. And we needed a long form to say, no, that is clear about what those terms mean and how it's meant to be then implemented and protected. We also didn't have a women's collective bargaining agreement. So it was a big CBA. And I think, the NRL would admit there was probably a lack of understanding and IP, on the other side of the table with how big an agreement that was going to be. And like anything, when you're trying to break new ground, there is levels of resistance about what do they want this for and how they're going to stop us doing our job, and do they want control, and do they want to run the game? And
I don't think it's that at all.
we don't.
No.
We don't want to run the game. We want to protect the players. We want to advance the game because we have no reason not to want to advance the game and bring more revenues in and make it gold standard. Because why would we not want that?
Well, I feel like that fight, obviously paid off because everything is up. Revenue was up, but fan attendance is up, membership is up. I guess expansion, we're on the precipice of that with the Chiefs and the Bears coming into the competition. Participation levels are up as well, I believe. So it's all worked out.
Yeah, again, when you look at it, it's like, saying Voldemort at different times when, when people talk about the CBA. But at the same time, you go...
It should be exciting, though. It should be an exciting time, though.
Well, I believe so. I believe that it's an opportunity to implement new things, and implement things that maybe other industries have tried and tested, or say, hey, that's not what was intended in the last CBA, so we can adjust it. And I'm also a big believer in... The CBA is there, obviously, it is set in stone from a legal perspective, but you can alter it, through the period of time in the CBA if by mutual agreement with the two parties. So we can amend it if we agree, and we have. We have amended parts of the CBA that relate to the international game, or the women's structure around relocation and travel policies and those types of things, because during the collective bargaining, during the term, you go, well, that's not operating as it was intended. So we both can agree and see that. So then we amend it. So again, I think that it's, there's going to be more opportunity to advance the game. We are in an incredibly strong position as the game. And yet, under Peter's leadership, there has been some significant uplift in revenues and whatnot. But then it's also our job to provide perspective from the players through the players' lens, because often there is a separation there, and it's our job to represent the collective, not just one or two players. So it's not about just doing what the best players want or the most influential or the highest paid or whatever. We very much, that's why we have our leadership structure in place, that cuts across all the different positions of influence within a team.
Speaking of perspective, probably the hottest topic we're going to speak about today is obviously the state of the game. Did you get a chance to listen to the podcast with Andrew by any chance?
Yeah, I did. Yeah.
Okay, so
I thought you looked great. So as per usual, no, it was a good podcast. Yeah.
Obviously, he's of the opinion that the game is in the best place it's ever been. When you hear from the fans' point of view, a lot of media journalists and whatnot, they believe the game needs to be scaled back, and I'm probably on the same opinion as well. And I, you know what? To be fair, Andrew did agree that it is a bit too quick at the moment. There's been too many 6 games, but that comes naturally midway through the season when players adjust, officiating kind of adjusts. And last year we went with the sin binning, if you recall.
Yep.
They were absolutely trigger happy, the officials. Yep. And then when we got to the middle part of the season, it kind of leveled itself out. But again, from your perspective, from the players' perspective, where do they see the game currently today?
Yeah, I think you mentioned the referees, and I think in between a rock and a hard place.
Yeah,
I do not believe that the referees just go out there on a weekend and collectively organise themselves to say, we're going to do this, as opposed to what's been instructed. So I think that, when you see crackdowns on policy, like the high tackle, I do not believe that that's just referees choosing to do it, of their own accord. There was a recorrection, and I think everyone then goes, well, yeah, okay, now this is back to normal. I thought the season last year, and particularly the final series, I haven't seen a better final series in my time of watching rugby league, which, as far back as I can remember, goes way back to the sort of late 80s, and but there is an issue in today's game. You can't just bury your head in the sand on this. We do know from our recent player survey that we've done with our player leaders and delegates, where we've got, over 50 of our players, which is part of our leadership structure across all positions. So props, fullbacks, halves, hookers, back rowers, centres, because we want the diversity to understand, otherwise the data, can be skewed. If you've only got, if you've got 80% of forwards completing the survey, that becomes a problem.
Of course.
So it's our job to then make sure that we're getting, accurate data that can be relied upon. And what we are seeing is that the players from our survey are enjoying the game less now than what they were last year. We also know that more than half of those players are more concerned with injuries than what they have been in previous years. So there is an issue around it. We do also know that players are struggling to understand what these infringements are for, and I believe that we're perilously close, or even we're already there in that land, where there is a disconnection with the fans. If the fans do not know, and the players do not know, and the coaches do not know what decisions we are making and why we are making those decisions with regards to penalties and infringements and whatnot, then they feel like their knowledge of the game is reducing. So then a reduction of knowledge or a lack of understanding then can lead to a disengagement from the viewer. Now that's the last thing we want. And I think that is absolutely why some of the other codes, like rugby union and like other, and even AFL to some extent, where people are going, what was that for? Like, we don't even know what it is. And the moment you drift into that space, you will see fans disengage. We're lucky in our view. I wouldn't say lucky, because it's been through strategic decision making that we are in the position that we are in from a strong code perspective. But rugby won't stay on its knees forever.
That's true.
Other codes historically have been stronger. So rugby was stronger, soccer was stronger. AFL, I think, is starting to decline, because I don't believe that they have what we have when it comes to, All-Stars, Origin, Vegas.
Initiatives, yeah. Magic round.
Origin for both women and men, by the way. Magic round, yes, they have a gather round, but I couldn't sit through all that. And then you've got a finals campaign, which was the best last year. Then you've got international footy. So we've got all these different chapters that happen through the year, which then maintain fan engagement. So I just think we need to understand that this is not the way the game should be played. And I absolutely will refute people saying that if people don't like it, just don't play. Is that really the answer?
People?
There's a couple. I think they're on an island on their own. But I think that, again, our fans are incredibly educated. And
honest.
Absolutely, and they are well engaged. And I think most fans, outside of their bias towards their team, want the best for the game.
That's fair, man.
And so I think that there needs to be a recorrection. I think and I believe it needs to happen without it causing too much issue for the game.
I think the fans are probably the most passionate and loyal supporters that we have currently, in Australia anyway. Speaking of fans, like, the noise around the game at the moment is the 6 agains. And, geez, on average, how many 6 agains are in a game, you reckon?
There's plenty.
Just give me a number. Roughly, what do you think? 20, 30?
Yeah, there'd be probably more.
Probably more, right?
Yep.
So if the 6 agains weren't in the game, does that correlate to being a penalty instead? Would it? I don't think so, because I think the issue here is over compliance.
Yes.
I feel like we want a perfect game. Players need to be 100% disciplined on all times in every aspect on the field, which I think is impossible. It's impossible.
Well, I think the referees are in a really difficult position because the speed of the game has absolutely increased. And then when you are looking at just the ruck alone, there are multiple things that a referee has got to look at. Have they found their feet? Is the ball being played properly? Are the markers square? Is the hand on the ball? Was it high?
If there was ever a time to have two referees, it'd be now, not back then.
Yeah. So I think that this is where it becomes problematic. And again, yes, there are more tries, which we have an issue with. I think the margins now have blown out beyond 20 on average, which is not good, for the game. When we have got a great product, we have got the best, in my view, male and female athletes playing our game.
I agree.
There are absolutely more out there that are playing other codes, which we're welcome to have. But I do believe that we have a tremendous asset in our players where they're authentic, they're incredible athletes, they are marketable, and they love the game. Every player started from what? A fan. They were fans.
But me and you were.
You and I. That's why we end up players. And the game knows that. The NRL knows that if you start as a fan, then you're obviously more likely to play. If then you are playing, you are more likely to then stay engaged as a fan if you have played the game, because there's a deeper connection, of what the game's about. So that's why participation becomes so important, that we want more people participating, because then that transfers into a more rusted on fan. And now with the women, going gangbusters, we have to be very careful that we don't expand the women's game from a team perspective beyond what is available from a talent, perspective, to be able to then make it sustainable long term. But for us, there is a genuine concern around some of the data that's coming out, some of the data that we've got from clubs. The game absolutely is more intense. I don't care. We don't care what the other side of the data is, because the information that we have is that it is more intense. There is more fatigue in the periods that players have ball in play.
Yeah.
Yes, there are more tries, but during that period of time, the players are just trying their best to recover to then start again. There is no break in play whilst the ball's in play, which also then means, certainly from my perspective, having played and being a fan of the game, I think there's less strategy involved when it comes to organised plays, and I think people want to see creativity. They don't want our game to become something that is just players running from dummy half and it's the fittest that survive. There has to be some level, and I do believe, and we do believe, that there was a period of time when there was too many in the tackle, 3 and 4, 5-man tackles, which then meant that there was too much pressure being placed on the halves, because if the defensive line is set all the time, then they can get up off the line much quicker. They can apply pressure to the halves. They can shut down the fullbacks, those types of things, which then mean that there's less creative play. Now, again, you've got to find the balance between that. We are seeing less 3 and 4-man tackles, but there are then more 2-man tackles, which then means those 2 men are having to work harder because they're not getting 3 and 4 in the tackle.
Which means it's less strategy.
Yes.
Like I feel, but the NRL, in the view of that, there's more strategy in the game today. Yes, there's more, I guess, athletic. We're seeing the players show that athletic brilliance because you're coming up against fatigued players, of course.
Yes.
But because the ruck is so fast, you don't have time to set your attacking set. Like as you know, when we have a set, if we're kicking for touch, we have to get 2 points on the field to set up for a big play and whatnot, right? It's becoming less and less like that. Like I feel like that's where we have an advantage over rugby union. I feel and I believe we have more strategy and tactical plays than union does. I could be wrong, but that's what I believe. But now it's not becoming that. It's just, this is where we're going. I hate to say it, but this is where we're going into touch / Oz tag territory. Quick play the ball, bang, straight behind the ruck, either a little short tip on pass outside the B defender or the C defender, and I don't know, it eliminates the.
Well, I don't think people what people don't want is margin increase, and we are seeing that. We genuinely are seeing for the first time in the last few years
Hip drop increase.
The margins are increasing. Now I believe they're above 20. Whereas if you remember, like a couple of years ago, we had more under 13 or inside that. If you're looking from a market spread perspective, is if you're betting at the under 13s from a margin, that was winning like 60 odd % of the time. Like now it's like people would be absolutely going for the over 40s and over 50s points scored in a game. Plus 13s are, more likely. Again, I think people want tries. I was on the competition committee and, a few years ago before it was disbanded. And one of the key things that we were concerned about was there were less tries, there were less line breaks. We ran a session, with some of the best minds of the game, by me and Deakin University, where we had Wayne Bennett, Andrew Johns, Brad Fittler, Mal Meninga, Des Hasler, Warren Ryan, Lockyer, all these guys that were part of it, and your Wayne Bennett's of the world. We got them together in 2 separate sessions to work through a process that was like looking at new rules of the game, or what was some of the issues that the game was facing and how could we adjust it. Now, it was clear that from that process that we ran that there wasn't enough reward for a good tackle. There were too many gang tackles, and we addressed that. We put forward recommendations to the competition committee about the change of scrum. So that was via that group about moving the scrum, which has been a tremendous move. We then explored 6 agains because it was in the All-Stars a number of years ago. We then explored that in the committee in the 2 working groups. We put forward a recommendation that it could be an option to bring into play, but we thought it was better to trial it in State Cup or in some of the dead rubbers at the end of the year. That was immediately put in from that type of recommendation, and the scrums. And there was an issue around the fact that, again, how do we get it so players are less likely to get in the tackle to be able to reward a strong run, but also don't forget to reward a good tackle. Now, I don't think good tackles are being rewarded. I don't think a good one-man tackle, it is impossible, to have that not be a 2-second, 3-second play the ball. Now, we know that from a fatigue perspective, players consistently asked to get back 10, on the back of a 3.5, second play. That is incredibly brutal, to be able to do that. And so that's why some of the data and the metrics that we're getting from clubs is that, where are we at from a fatigue perspective, heart rate, monitoring, even players being able to get in a position in the defensive line. There's a difference between compliance and availability, to get back in the line. So again, these are all things that we want to be able to work through. I don't believe the NRL or the Commission, or Peter, want a game that goes backwards from a fan engagement perspective. So therefore, it's on all of us to be able to provide, that evidence and the information, and the willingness to collaborate on, what is the best way forward.
From your perspective, is the game going backwards in terms of fan engagement and player participation with the 6 agains currently in place?
I don't think it is now. I think it could be. Yeah, and I think that's a risk. And again, I know we can't just make decisions on maybes and what ifs, because then there's no science and behind it. Yeah. But I absolutely have a concern. Me personally, have a concern that one of the strengths of our game is the diversity of athletic ability and size, of our players. So, I do believe that we found a good balance in the last, couple of years where, yes, some of the bigger boys had to cut back, and to be able to play the style of game that I believe was more engaging, and we believe was more engaging for the fan. But if you start to drift into this space of, well, we're just basically slightly bigger bodies than AFL players, then my concern is, what does that do for our pathways? What does that do, with our participation? And does that mean that codes like Union start licking their lips a bit to say, well, we'll take you back because our game can cater for that? Yeah. And you don't want to just have basically purely effectively glorified marathon runners like out there that are doing it, because that's not our game. People still want collision. They still want to see big players coming up against big bodies. They do want the little guys and the halves and whatnot, but even halves today are not so little. There's only a couple of them probably that are nearly below 6 foot nearly. But they need opportunity in the game. And that's why I think the balance was right, where it wasn't balanced right, where there was too many of those tackles, what we just spoke about before, which then was applying too much pressure to halves. Now, I think it's gone too far the other way. And as we've discussed, like, people like you and others would be fantastic. You'd be loving the fact, like, you would be able to play in today's game and dominate play the ball. But we don't want our big players then having shorter careers, not being able to play longer. We actually, with expansion occurring, we need players to be playing longer, and we need our average age of our players to increase. Yep. We've seen over the last decade the average age of our players dropping probably from around that 26 mark down to 24.
Wow.
So that then means that there's less rugby league IP, there's less experience in the game. We're losing our players, and largely when we are losing players from the NRL, they aren't going back out and playing State Cup, en masse. So therefore, that's gone. They're gone out of the game. Now that's a separate matter to address about, like, how do we retain people at State Cup level and country rugby league and whatnot. But we have in the women's game an attrition rate of over 30, or probably around just over 30%.
Growth's been fantastic.
But they're leaving the game as well. 30% only playing a season and going, or like every year there's a 30% churn rate. So that needs to be, addressed as well, which is why expanding the women's game when you have that attrition rate isn't going to be, best for the game. We certainly believe that our top players in the game, the gap between our most highly paid players and our minimum wage is too close, which then means that players are happy to jump from club like a Jessie Southwell and whatnot. People say, oh, well, why is she going there? Well, it's because obviously the gap between the top and the bottom is probably too close. We wanted a couple of marquee players available in the women's game. It just wasn't, we weren't able to get that over the line. And we had to compromise on that, because of the issues that we were being faced with in that space. But look, I do believe that in the next CBA, those top line players need to be paid more, or we need to relax IP restrictions, to allow them, the women players and the men, but largely the women, because it's in a big growth phase, to capitalise on their commercial value. Yep. And so, look, it's complex, but it also doesn't need to be too complex.
No, that's my point. So, like, if I'm going to bring you back for a second, back to the men's game, women's game as well. There's one common theme that we've been speaking about, not only us right now, but on social media, amongst all the fans, amongst all the journos, and it keeps going back to the 6 again rule. And this is not an NRL bashathon, all right? So I'm not saying I'm anti-6 again. I think it's been great, but I think it's just been taken too far, like you just said, okay? There were too many gang tackles, right? They were getting too many players taking down their attackers, which was obviously slowing down the play of the ball. But now it's to a point where it's taken the strategy away from the game. It's caused too much fatigue to the players, and where the game is currently at today, I can't see it being sustainable for the next 3-5 years. It's impossible. But it's not only the players. You mentioned the referees before. Name me another sport where we're making our officials make game time decisions while they're under fatigue. and the speed of the game. NFL don't do that. NBA ain't doing that. Soccer referees aren't doing that. Name me another sport. So there's an increased demand there for them as well. So we're not far off, but we're not far off. Like, it's just those 6 games, we just need to scale it back.
Well, it shows you just how a tinker, like, you know, we're not in Santa's workshop. You know, this isn't about, you know, tinkering, you know, with the game too much. And if you overdo it, then this is the consequence. And we did call that out, that this, I don't think the intention was to ever get it to this point.
Okay.
And we did say that there can be unintended consequences by introducing rules without it being tested or without it being trialled in various forms that are available to the game. State Cup, you know, and end of season and, you know, those types of things. We certainly believe that this is an unintended consequence of the way in which the rules were introduced. There has been an acknowledgement and an agreement, you know, from the NRL that they were introduced way too late, and that the stakeholders were engaged, you know, too late on those types of things. And they're, you know, to their credit, they're putting things in place to now address that moving forward in future years. But again, I certainly don't think we need to be fixed in this. And the NRL has shown over the years, and in recent times, like, their willingness to wind things back, whether there's acknowledgement of that, is kind of irrelevant. Like, I don't think anyone, you know, is demanding, you know, the NRL to agree with "I told you so's" or those types of things. Just what people are wanting is to say, hey, are you listening? You know, do you understand what's the data showing and what's the real data that we need, you know, to be able to better understand how we can give the fans what they want, but also how are we not over-indexing in certain areas with the players that then can compromise their, you know, their long-term viability in the game. And we don't want to lose players when we are expanding. You know, we have to ensure that we're retaining players, that we are attracting the best talent globally, and that we are protecting our pathways where people genuinely believe I can play that.
Yep.
You know, what we don't want is people to say, I think that's going to be way too hard for me to get there. Yes, there has to be difficulty. There has to be difficulty to play elite level, totally. But what you don't want is to shut off the pipeline to be able to say, well, this game is just no longer, you know, for you, despite the fact that, you know, you are working hard and you should be rewarded for, you know, consistently hard work and effort.
But it's a double-edged sword, because rugby league isn't for everyone. Rugby league's a bloody tough game.
Absolutely.
So I feel like yes, we want inclusion, 100%. We want everyone to enjoy the game and, you know, be welcome to the game. But the reality is, it's a physical, high-contact sport.
Yep.
And that's what separates us from the rest. Like, the reason our sport does so well, it's because it's a modern-day gladiatorial sport. Like, people love that about us. We've got tribalism. We've got, big hits, you know, athletic players from, which I believe we've got the most athletic, like you said before. So it's hard to keep that identity with what you're saying as well.
Yeah. Well, again, I think that we absolutely are 100% right where, as I said, when we have the capacity with our athletes that can run, tackle, step, and show levels of endurance unlike other codes, that is a significant weapon in a battle for TV rights and for market share and whatnot. So, but like I said before, you don't want the fans to be in a position where they go, I don't understand the game anymore, and I don't know what is happening, and therefore, because I don't know what's happening and I cannot understand why these decisions are being made or what that decision was, I'm now disengaging and I'm pulling back. And we don't want our game to be, you know, at different times like a Big Bash where it's just background noise, you know, in a TV, you know, in the lounge room, and, you know, you're playing snakes and ladders with your kids and you're going and you're looking up every now and then just to see whether a 6 was hit or whatever. Yeah. We don't want that. We want consistent engagement, good understanding of the game, and our game is meant to be simple enough for people to really enjoy and to engage new fans. Yeah. I think that's what is great about a game, and we should. But absolutely, like you said, this isn't a game for everyone. When it comes to making it at the elite level, what sport does for people, certainly from my perspective, is, athletes are sort of like your real life superheroes. That's why everyone loves, superheroes and whatnot. But when it comes to sport, you can play out that superhero. You can become that person. Yeah. Now, particularly with our men's and women's game, like sport is that. So you get to go and fulfill your dreams of becoming like, of course, everyone wanted to fly like Superman on that. But at the same time, you get to live that by becoming an athlete.
Yeah,
and
I love
that's
that.
what our game provides people from all backgrounds, and particularly players that come from a long way back. And that's what our game has. We have a lot of players that come from a long way back that have to grit their teeth through childhood and through life to make it in this world. And that's what builds resilience, and that's what certainly from our perspective is demonstrated all over with our players that give back to community and are very community focused, because that's where they've come from. And I'd certainly think the rise of the Pacific players, Aboriginal Indigenous players that are very strong in that space, with that culture, that's
Still flourishing.
That is something that has really been great for our game.
The rule changes that have been implemented for 2026 obviously have been around the trainer restrictions as well. I think it's a tick. Do you agree?
Yeah, they're not going to be implemented until the next pre-season, because they're implemented now, but at the same time, the biggest challenge is not in season, because we're not seeing clubs do 3, 4, 5 contact sessions a week. That's in the pre-season, and we didn't want these to be necessarily introduced, but it was done by necessity. And good reason about, protecting, whether it's coaches and high performance managers from themselves. But some of the work they're doing is tremendous. They're always advancing. But, the concern is that we don't want to see as many contact sessions in the pre-season as what some clubs were doing, because we know that the repeated collision actually elevates the chances of obviously head injury and concussions and those types of things. So again, the game has never been in a better position with regards to monitoring and assessing.
That's true.
They've put in some fantastic initiatives to be able to better protect the players from themselves and others. That's why it was a tough call. Like when we had to introduce the independent doctor and we had to take the choice away, that was, on my watch, as well, like where we had to implement it. And we had to have strong conversations with guys like Jammer and whatnot that has now come full circle. It's like, no, I was against it, but now he fully understands it. And so that's going to be, a big part of it. The women will have these restrictions in place, for their pre-season.
So with the trainer restrictions, is this also to reduce the unnecessary stoppages that trainers, like, for example, carry messages onto the field and stuff like that? Is that...
Yeah, well, obviously, they brought in those rules this year around, how often people can go on the field and when they can go on the field.
Yeah.
So, I definitely think there were blurred lines there with regards to what people were doing. Yeah. And again, it's all gaming the system, and people want to win and, whatnot. So that restriction was, widely supported from our players when we did the surveying of that, prior to the implementation of that rule.
Which I think is fair.
Yeah, but we do know that based on our surveying that there is over 30% of players are underreporting head injuries at training, because they feel like there's a pressure to continue training and continuing to just get on with the job, because you and I both know training is often the hardest, some of the hardest stuff that you deal with,
particularly
because
pre-season.
Clubs will obviously push the envelope there because you want training to basically be harder than what you're going to face on the field. So then it becomes, easier for you in the moment. But that is the sort of stuff that we need to offset and we need to reduce. We need to continue to provide a safe workplace, based on our environment. So what we do know is that there is varying levels of investment or prioritisation of mental health and psychologically safe environments within clubs. That's a concern. There are some clubs doing some great things. There are some clubs that are falling below the line in that area. And I think whilst ever you have a situation where players don't feel like it's safe to come forward and be honest with how they're feeling, that is, a danger.
Well, it's a hard one. It's circumstantial. So if the team is not doing too well, that's where I think the pressure comes in, right? For you to have to be on the paddock, but the onus comes to the player, comes back to the player as well.
Yes.
Because, as you know, if it's in pre-season or if it's during the year, you don't want to miss training sessions because you feel like every player is different, right? Players are some are OCD in the sense that they need to train every single session to be game ready.
Look,
it's a tricky one.
I mean, I trained multiple times with various injuries that I never disclosed.
Yeah.
Because I was always worried about losing my spot, or I wanted to be able
letting your teammates down.
Yeah, letting my teammates down, and also I think growing up the way I did, with an old man that had one arm and one eye, like you get very little sympathy around injuries and whatnot. So you're always building that level of resilience. If I'm saying I've torn my medial or something, I'm not going to dad for sympathy. So therefore, there is a level that is required in the game to push yourself beyond the everyday person. That, again, this is why it's not for everyone to play at the elite level. But we need to continue to provide psychologically safe environments, and the best clubs are doing it very well. And it comes back to what sort of culture you have at your club. If a player feels safe and they trust their coach and they trust their people, they will absolutely be open and honest, not just about your injuries, but about life. I'm struggling because I've got this issue, or, struggling with my relationship, or I'm struggling financially, I'm struggling with this stuff. That's...
The game's definitely improved in that sense.
Absolutely there has. But that is also because of hard advocacy work that we've had to put in place to ensure that every club has a wellbeing education manager.
Interchange rules, listen, it's not going to be perfect. Someone's going to miss out, or two people might miss out, but obviously extending the bench to a 6-player bench, I think it protects the quality of the game. So if your halfback goes down, you have a half or a utility player on the bench that can slot into that position, which is vital. You've got the luxury to obviously tap into an outside back if you need to. What are your thoughts? Our
players... The players had some concerns about this one because of the fact that they knew how it could disrupt, a few things. Disrupt the culture internally, where, if that's
where it's not perfect.
When there's 4 people on the bench, that, they're the 4 that are going to get played. Now, sometimes, that 4th player, wouldn't get on, or they'd get limited game time. But I think when you're in that situation where you've got 6, then there's always going to be scrutiny around that. The other concern that they had was about, no club was really not going to probably carry a half or anything. So where do they get game time if they're not playing and they don't get on, and then they're asked to fly back the next morning, and then play for their state cup or those types of things. And so the development and the match type development that was required. We also believe it was... the greater concern for us was the activation of that 18th man on head knocks or HIAs, whether it was through foul play or not. We thought that because it's the one injury that is taken out of the hands of players. Sure, like someone blows out their knee, and some people have been in a position where they can continue for a period of time, or for different injuries that they've got. But for things like that, through foul play when it's taken out of your hands, we felt that there should be an immediate activation of the 18th man, which then offsets some of those issues that we've spoken about. And we've advocated that for the last few years, to activate the 18th man on foul play or head injuries that they've been forced to remove. The
in-goal 0 tackle change, thank God. Not punishing a team for an attacking set and for it to go completely wrong. That's common sense, right?
Oh, 100%. Yeah. I totally agree with
that. Okay, this one we spoke about before, around the 6 agains, now going to 20-metre line and beyond. That probably needs to be scaled back a bit. Yes. I think we're both in agreement with that. This one, I can happily say, if I was playing, I'll be loving this rule. But as a fan now, I fucking can't stand it. And you know what I'm going to say? The disruptor.
Yes.
Oh my God. Fuck that right off, because I don't even think the refs know how to adjudicate it in the present today. I feel, obviously being a 5'11" winger, if I'm coming up against a 6'2" or 6'4" or a 6'6" sub, I know I'm not going to out-jump him. So, you can take it. But, like, it takes away the excitement. Like, you bat in the back, you pick up the scraps, second phase footy. That's excitement, We should leave that in the game, and that's coming from someone that would benefit from disruptor rule. So
yeah, I mean, I know you've still got nightmares about how I used to jump over the top of
oh,
your
don't
training.
even! You couldn't jump. You couldn't even hop out there.
Please. White man can't jump was basically filmed off me. But we I mean that's again. We're not 100% sure how that rule has even come into play. Yes, if you're below the sort of the average height of fullbacks and wingers, it's great. But I think it's what you want to try and remove is sort of discretionary calls, and people go, that's not right, or it's not how it was intended the game to be played.
Let's talk about, we touched on the global expansion a little bit, but I want to hear your thoughts and the players' kind of point of view. I think Vegas has been great for the game, great for the players as well, for the experience. I think there's been chatter around global round. Has that been discussed amongst the players yet? Is that something that's going to be implemented in the next CBA? Like, what's happening there?
Yeah, I think that players are obviously supportive of opportunities to play on the world stage like Las Vegas provides. I think the NRL did a great job, particularly this year, with regards to introducing the chartered flights and whatnot, because that was a significant lift in revenues and the game. That has, from what I've been told by the NRL, that it was now generating a return.
Yep.
And we're in profit land in that space. So again, they're the sort of things that again I really applaud. Peter, he does take risks. I like that. I like someone that takes risks, and I like we certainly like the fact that again. You take those risks because you believe in the product, and I genuinely believe that Peter absolutely believes in the quality of product, and Andrew, for that matter. So I think players would much prefer to go and play a game in Las Vegas, and that's been great. I think it's given the fans a great opportunity, to travel and take families over there and experience different things. So it'll be interesting to see what happens next. Obviously, we've got another year of it next year and go from there. Global round is an interesting concept. Again, we'd be absolutely keen to work through that with the NRL and how the players can best support that. Based on promotion and activations and obviously where it's played and how that can all be pulled together. Like I said, you wouldn't be doing it, and even Peter wouldn't be exploring it if you didn't believe that the product was digestible and is able to be engaging for the viewer. This is why the current issues are so important to address, because we don't want new fans going, what was that? What was that for? I don't understand. Why is he waving his arm in the air, or why is she waving her arm in the air? That's not what we want. And I also think that's why football has been successful over the years, because it is quite easy to understand, and it's a global game and it doesn't involve collision, obviously, but I think rugby league should be that version of contact sport.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Going to this next CBA, what are the main concerns for the players?
Oh, look, I think there's always a concern around people trying to erode the rights and the agreement rights that we have in the current agreement, because and again,
what do you mean by that?
Well, obviously, some administrators will always want sometimes the path of least resistance. So the least resistance is no agreement rights, no consultation rights. So I don't even like the word consultation, because, it's kind of nothing really, if, because you're leaving it then open to, is the other side going to properly listen and understand and and work through what your proposal is or your feedback is. So, and that's not necessarily about the NRL. It's just that that's what consultation means. Like, it's that they have to engage, but then that's discretionary around sort of, are they actually engaging, or is it just a process that they'll work through? But agreement rights obviously then require our agreement. So, for example, like player property use, agreement rights on sharing medical information, the aggregation of data and the commercialising of player data and information, agreement rights over increasing rounds, those type agreement rights on the salary cap and minimum wage and all that.
There can't be more rounds.
No, and I mean, ideally, the starting place for us is 22 and below, really, and I think that expansion obviously provides that opportunity to do that, because with expansion, people go, oh yeah, but less rounds means less games. No, it doesn't. Because if there's more games on a weekend, then that means that there's potentially more, there is more games through the season. But again, so those are the types of things that we would be probably, most concerned with if there was an attempt to erode the rights. And I don't know, I mean, speaking from our perspective, has there been a major issue? Has the game gone backwards or in a position of decline because of what the CBA says and how we are operating? No, it hasn't.
That gives the NRL a vote of confidence for the next CBA negotiation.
Exactly. So you would suggest how, was the fight necessary in the dispute that we had? I don't believe so. Has it proven that it didn't amount to anything significant that is damaging the game or restricting the game from growth? No. What it does do is it brings us closer together because of agreement rights on certain things. It nearly forces you to come back, come to the table to discuss things, to disclose information. That was a key part of our negotiation, the disclosure of, financial information to be able to understand where the game is at financially to determine, the revenue share arrangement and the 300 million cash and asset base that they were generating. That is something that's fundamental. How can you do an agreement that doesn't have, financial transparency? So, the other key parts will be around, obviously, what the game plans to do with the women's game. Okay. We certainly have our views around that. We want to advance the women's game from a payments, perspective,
which is fair.
But it has to be sustainable. There has to be a strategy aligned with that. We certainly believe that there's an opportunity to have, certainly someone at the NRL that focuses on the women's game. Okay. With regards to, because our game is not, as I said before, the beauty of our game and what the game has been able to transform itself into is all these different chapters and these high points through the season that fans go on a journey with, where, as I said, we've got All Stars, Vegas, and all the things that I mentioned earlier on in the show, that it's challenging, I would suggest, for people at the NRL if they're just loading more on the plate, because now you have to think about the commercialising of the women's game, which is different from the men's game because it's in a different phase. It's in a growth phase, and we know that the way you market and sell the women's game has to be different from the men's. We don't want to copy and paste. Yeah. There's also theories around why would we want to saturate a Sydney market with more women's teams? If you look at what are the key issues here around the men's game, too many Sydney teams, the saturation of professional sport in Sydney and New South Wales, when you've got rugby union, 2 AFL teams, 2 football franchises, a basketball team, all these types of things that are there. So, is it something we should be exploring where we go and introduce, 3 women's teams in, or two other women's teams in New Zealand at the right time? And they just have a strong affiliation and a partnership with the Sydney team. Do we go to regional places like, the far north coast, like Coffs Harbour or those types of things, for a women's team? Do we give them their own place to commercialise, which then gets new money into the table and has a nursery of female talent that doesn't necessarily require mass relocation, for women, which is a cost on the game, and that forces sort of women to leave their place, at the moment of employment and those types of things. So I think that's going to be a really fundamental one, is like, what is the strategy, for the women's game? How are we commercialising it? Do we introduce hybrid models, from a broadcast rights perspective? How are we wanting to, commercialise that from a broadcast perspective? So I think they're those sort of key ones. Obviously, a revenue share is fundamental. Like, the game has built its 300 million, or it's very close, to the 300 million cash and asset base, which was done, which we agreed to. For the right reasons, where we didn't want the game to be vulnerable like it was in COVID, where when the game shut down, the game only had 40 odd million available in cash. We had literally 2 months or 3 months of cash available to fund the entire game, which is why Peter and I worked really hard, collaborating, and all the different people that were involved in, Project Apollo and whatnot, is that we didn't want, the agreement that we struck was, we'll do basically a 3-month deal, which was risky, from an RLPA perspective, a 3-month deal, whereas other codes and other PAs did a long-term, agreement, or certainly the 12 months to protect. What we certainly believed and thought was, Peter was going to actively and proactively get the game back, and particularly with the way in which he was wanting to engage with us, which then meant that let's not do a long-term deal. Let's do a 3-month deal, and then the game comes back, and then there's more money available, and better protections for players. That's why players, we took, like about 20% reduction in that first year. And then smaller reductions over the next 2 years. But that's why the revenue share was important when we secured the 38 million to push back into players when the game rebooted and generated the revenue. And so players, literally, were in a much stronger position. And fortunately enough, that was a terrible time for so many people. But what it did do was showed the importance of sport and what sport brings to a community.
Hope.
And time out from what seems to be more challenging lives that people are living, because they want a disconnection from some of the things that they're having to endure or overcome through the week. So that's what sport, is able to do.
Well, going back to that, I think with as we approach the bargaining agreement negotiations, I don't think it's going to be as, I don't think you're going to be required to, form up battle formations, grab your pitchforks and torches. I don't think it's get to that point. But I did have a thought in mind, when you're meeting, obviously you're sitting down at the table with Andrew and Peter. Is that correct? Yeah. 2, 3 big personalities. All right. Obviously they're strong on their views. You're strong on your views. I don't know, this could be ridiculous, but it's just a thought in mind. Obviously, when you're thinking of foreign affairs, you've got your big superpowers, right, and your presidents and whatnot. They're not, 9 times out of 10, they're not meeting at the table themselves. They obviously have ambassadors. So should there be, a delegate from the association, a delegate from the NRL meeting before you kind of meet at the table with the big dogs?
It's a really good thought. What you hope to do is, because
I don't think there's an advisor in the NRL's HQ giving the perspective of the players and why they're coming with these issues. This is the reason they're coming strong with these views is A, B, and C. Yeah. And vice versa with the RLPA. I don't think there's someone internally saying, okay, the NRL are strong with this because of this.
And I think that
it's just our view, and it's just we have to hope to reach a common ground.
Yeah, hopefully through the period of time, from bargain to bargain, is that where relationships can be restored and built. You can build trust and confidence because of how people are going about the collective bargaining agreement which you've secured. So if people just keep eroding or not complying with what we agreed, then there's lack of trust. Then the trust erodes, because then it's you didn't even comply with the rules that we did, and we were in constant battle with that potentially. So again, it's certainly on both parties to have the right people in place and approach the bargain with pure intentions, and obviously be able to look through the lens. I mean, I know when we develop our strategy and our proposals, like we absolutely work through a process where we will try and play devil's advocate or be that red hat at the table where you've got to where you're bargaining against yourself type thing and saying,
right.
well, why would they agree, or why would be the pushback on this? And so we certainly the way we operate, and something that I truly value in, is understanding where the other side would see a challenge and where would see a problem. Because then if you do truly understand that, then you can have a level of empathy or compassion or understanding around why, but then you can then problem solve and say, well, where's the off ramp here? So if we're going for this and that's their issue, well then do we give this, or how do we give them a feeling of relief, or I suppose of trust, that it's not going to massively impact how they run the game? Again, like we just said before, how has the existing CBA negatively impacted the game? It has not impacted negatively once. In fact, it's enhanced it, because again, players feel like that they are being respected more. There is an issue obviously at the moment with the rules. Like, we always maintain that we don't want to run the game. It's not our job to run the game. It's our job to present the views of the players and advocate on their behalf and give them a voice. That is our job. And so, and it's also incumbent on us, or certainly I value it, is to understand the other side. Not all leaders will do that, so because it's not written in stone that you have to. It's just the way that we certainly believe is the right way of going about it. It also comes back to the quality of your board and, having players that genuinely understand the game and, some of the complexities that exist, which is why we have, 70-75% of our board are players, and we have that leadership structure in place. So, look, I'm always going to be optimistic. That's the way I am about that. I don't believe it will be as confrontational and as brutal as what it was last time. But if it is, I'll be up for it. Some people might believe I love confrontation and whatnot. But I'd rather us working collaboratively, but I'm happy to have one, happy to have a scrap if people want to have one. But I definitely think that, I'll start from a place of optimism and positivity, and you got to just find your true north and just operate within your values and be principle but focused, and but it's not going to be as big as CBA because of like I said, we didn't have a long form and we didn't have the women's CBA in place, and we had the dispute around the COVID money
exactly
that was to come back. So that was kind of like the first 4 or 5 months that delayed us. So again, I would like to think Peter, having gone through that process as a chair, as effectively like a new chair in a CBA, I think that he'll be better for it. Andrew will be, we will be. We've had time to build, hopefully a stronger relationship as well leading up to it. And the game, it's a great product and it's an exciting time. Like the game we shouldn't descend it into chaos, like it was last time.
Well, as you know, media love chaos. Media loves creating hysteria. But yeah, I think we both can agree the game is in a very good position at the moment. Yes, it needs a bit of tinkering here and there. Nothing's ever perfect. We're not too far off, but like Peter, Andrew, yourself, what you guys have done collectively to obviously enhance the product of the game, the enjoyment for the fans is something that everyone has to commend, I think. And saying that, I think the discussion today really, gave people a bit of an insight about what you're thinking, what the players are feeling, and I guess we can leave it up to them. And mate, thank you so much for your time today, and until next time.
No, thanks, Source. Appreciate it, mate. And yeah, I mean, it's great that these types of platforms like yourself and others, it's just awesome to see, that people feel so passionate about the game and they see this as an opportunity. That's why all these platforms are existing, right? Because people there's always a place for, the mainstream media and whatnot. But shows like yours, I think that's fans are loving the fact that there's so much information out there, and giving us an opportunity to, mates aside, to obviously tell our story and understand how and why we go about decisions, I think is critical. And again, fans that are feel a bit disenchanted with the game, like just again, I think that it's up to the fans and whatnot to be able to continue to voice your opinions. They'll always matter, and we look forward to tearing in for the rest of the season.
Without what's the old saying? Without fans, there's no game. So
yeah, exactly.
You have to value their voice, and I think the whole point of the show is to kind of be, I guess, a microphone for the fans. And mate, today I come with no agenda. I just wanted to bring you in, get your side of things, just like I did with Andrew. Yes, have differences on certain topics, which is normal, but ultimately, hopefully, come together and find that common ground, agreeing on those important factors that we spoke about, and ultimately give the fans the best game and best version of itself.
100%. Again, you nailed it. Like, without the players, there's no game, but without the fans, there's no professionalism. Exactly. Players wouldn't be where they are, like, without the fans being engaged. So stick with us. We're a bloody good game, and we'll continue to drive forward.
Have a great day, mate. Maybe buy a size up in that shirt, and until next time.
Yeah. Thanks, mate.